today is a special day, and I want to tell you why. It's January the 14th, and by this time, 90% of you who have set health related New Year's resolutions have abandoned them at this point, which is why I'm holding this special live just for you. If you've already kind of given up or resorted back to old ways, I want to maybe interrupt that process and keep you on track with something very simple, something that will really make a big difference to you, and something that can make your 2026 this time at the end, or this time 2027 will be a very different time if you listen to what I have to say here right now. So here we go. First, I'm going to switch my screen here. We're going to talk about why two different people can eat the same, but get two very different results. And this may be why some of you who are watching have abandoned your New Year's resolution. You got a friend that eats just like you eat just like them, and yet they are having results and you not so much. So before I go any further, a little bit of a disclaimer. This is for education only. The information shared today is for educational purposes. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making changes to your diet, exercise routine, or medications. So, two people eat the same food, different results. What gives? Why is this? What happens? Well, there's a new concept that has come about here very recently that is explaining some of this. And to introduce this new concept in health, I first want to introduce another concept. It's called the map isn't the territory. And so what does that mean? Just because it's different, don't shy away. The map isn't the territory means that when you have a map in your hands, here I'm going to show you in just a second 2 examples. But when you have a map in your hands, you could be looking at this map and it looks like totally serene territory. But when you actually get to that territory, it's something very different than what it looks like. For example, Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark, they were hoping to have like an easy river highway to get to the west. What they encountered was very different than what they were hoping to encounter based on what maps they had. Instead, they encountered really treacherous territory, a lot of mountain ranges, and the rivers that they did encounter weren't that serene. And so it was a tough journey. So their map wasn't the territory. It was worse. The territory was worse than the map. But then you got other people in the beginning of this country, before the West was, the Great Plains areas were fully mapped out. Well, they thought it was a desert, so it was they called it the Great American Desert at the time. As it turned out, that was the desert that never was. So let me go back to this presentation. The Great American Desert was the desert that wasn't. The reality was, there was actually good farmland out there. We ended up making something better of it than we thought we ever could. So the map isn't the territory. Now, how does this relate to what we're talking about here? Well, single numbers are parts of a map, but they're not the whole map. For example, when you stand on a scale, that's part of the territory, but it's not the whole story. And if you get an LDL, you get your cholesterol panel back, you get the LDL number. And if the LDL is quote unquote high, which that's beginning to be questioned very seriously now, and as you're going to see in just a second, well, then that's not the whole story. And things may not be quite as bad as you thought. And also hemoglobin A1C, if that's normal, looks like it's a good territory, right? But things may not be that great. You can't be fooled into that. And that's what's happening to a lot of people. They're told their hemoglobin A1C is fine. Their fasting glucose is fine. You're good. The territory is great. But on the inside, the map, the actual territory there, not so good. So this is the problem with checkbox medicine. Your doctor has got a number of patients, a lot of doctors nowadays are employees of hospital systems. Hospitals over the last 20 years have been, getting to be bigger and bigger systems. Bigger hospital systems are buying the smaller ones up. They're becoming these sort of, consolidation of systems. And now with that and the change in the economic environment for physicians, they've become employees of those hospital systems, and they have expectations of those doctors for productivity. They got to get through that clinic, get so many patients seen. It's, there's no perfect system. I don't want to over criticize. There's no perfect system. There's always an upside and a downside to everything. But the bottom line is we are sacrificing some things with that system. For example, your doctor, who, by the way, may not know a whole lot more than you do about metabolic health. As we've looked at the studies on physicians, they're not faring a whole lot better than the average Joe at their metabolic health. My father was a perfect example of that. He died from metabolic syndrome, the same disease that's affecting so many other people right now. He had type 2 diabetes. He was overweight, high blood pressure, the whole 9 yards, cardiovascular disease. So he didn't do any better than anybody else. And the problem is, they got to get through patients. So they get those labs. They got a little protocol. Okay, this number's bad. Here's the medication for that. Next patient, next one. See you in a month, or see you in 3 months, or whatever. And that's a problem. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, hopefully, is give you a little bit more insight, some things that you can be a little bit more vigilant for yourself and actually know how to move the needle for yourself, even though maybe your efforts haven't done as good as your friend that's losing weight fabulously on whatever diet they're doing. You did the same diet, nothing happened. Well, this is maybe why. Okay. So there's a new term out now. This is very exciting. It's called metabolic vulnerability. And that sounds a little complex, but it's really not. It's not as complex as you think. But basically, it's a measure of how stressed is your metabolism right now. And there's a way to actually check for it. And think of it like this: the terrain stability versus fragility. Some terrain can handle storms. Other terrain crumbles pretty easily. So this term, metabolic vulnerability, explains why one person can eat a diet and they don't have much change, and another person can eat that same diet and they do see a lot of significant improvements. And what you can do about it if it doesn't work for you, how you can actually make a change. So this is why weight loss can feel so hard. If you've ever felt like losing weight is an uphill battle, well, it's not something you're imagining. Hunger is really the name of the game. It's the central single problem. The hunger always wins. It's not a character flaw on your part. Cravings will get stronger over time if you're not making the right changes in the diet. And then you have the energy crashes that happen. With bad metabolism comes low energy. And if your brain has low energy, it's hard to make behavior changes happen because you just don't have the mental punching power in there to keep up with the fight. So when you don't see these results, you tried something that worked for a friend and it's not working for you, then you start blaming yourself. Maybe I'm just too weak. Maybe I can't. I can guarantee you this: if you have a friend who's winning with a diet, it's because they are not hungry. If they are losing weight and you're not on the same diet, it's because your hunger levels are different. And there's a way for you to get a low hunger level, a normal hunger level. But the food that's out there, if you look at the food in the grocery stores right now, it's designed to make you hungry, to eat more. There's a path out of that. And it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, as you might suspect. It's not just your genetics. Genetics only account for at most 30% of the equation for, well, really the whole thing. But that 30% can actually be overcome pretty easily. I mean, think of it like this: if you're in a poker game, the hand that you're dealt Yeah, it's part of the equation, but there's other factors as to whether or not you win that poker game. How well do you bluff? You know, if you bluff pretty good and you're real strategic and all the other factors of the game, well, maybe you can still win just because. And it's actually the odds are much better than your, with your metabolism are better than your ability to bluff at poker. I'm not much of a poker player, but that's the case. So genes matter, but you can overcome if you've got a bad hand genetically. Usually, it can be overcome. There's very few situations where somebody's just got a devastating genetic makeup that they're very rare that you can't overcome. Now, the second thing is environment. A lot of people would say if you got whole families of people that are overweight, well, they say, well, that's just in their genes. It's extremely rare that it's just in their genes. But by the way, that's like 72% of everybody. So did suddenly 72% of all of everybody's genes just get bad when it used to be just 50 years ago, hardly anybody was overweight or not nearly as close to these numbers now. No, it's not what's happening. It's these people live together. They rub off on each other. It's the same influence. So it's not genetics, it's mental genetics in terms of we're influencing each other. So you can change these inputs. You have influence over these things, and it's not as hard as you think. Hunger is not a character flaw. If you're having to fight hunger, you got to keep making some changes and tweaking things until the hunger goes away. No one beats that hunger. No one. And so just because your friend did well on a diet doesn't mean they are just mentally tougher than you are. Probably not. Because trying to fight hunger is like trying to fight breathing. You're going to breathe. The urge is going to be too strong, and so is hunger. So have hope. Where there is a will, there's a way, there's a path to lowering that hunger level. Now, this metabolic vulnerability term, okay, there's 6 things now that they are looking at that make a difference as to whether or not you're doing okay metabolically. And if you start to fix these things, then you're going to not only improve your weight, but you can improve your blood pressure. You can improve your lipid profile, your cholesterol numbers. You can improve if you are a type 2 diabetic right now, or if you have proven insulin resistance, you can begin to move those numbers in the right direction, and a whole lot of other things. You can, if you have PCOS, you can begin to improve that condition and even no longer require the medications to achieve pregnancy. If you have erectile dysfunction, again, you can begin to move that in the right direction, start to no longer need medications for that issue. So what are these 6 clues about your metabolic terrain? Number 1 is glyc-A. Okay, and what this is, it's a sign of long-term inflammation in your body. There's a few different tests that we do for inflammation. One is called a SED rate. Another one's called a CRP, a C-reactive protein. You don't need to know these terms. They're not important. What you do need to know is that these things are CRP, which is what we classically, check for inflammation. It's an acute phase inflammation. That's inflammation that happened today. Okay. That's going on right now. In fact, these cholesterol studies that we did, there was one called the Jupiter trial, which is why we take cholesterol medicines after the age of 40, even if you don't have abnormal cholesterol numbers. That whole trial is based on this CRP, which is acute phase inflammation. Well, what if you just happen to have, the beginnings of a viral infection that day, or something like that drove your CRP up. So you need the cholesterol medicine just because you're over 40 and you had a CRP. So, and in fact, I think that they may have said that in that Jupiter trial that even people with normal CRP, even people with normal CRP might have, extra risk after 40. So just go on the cholesterol medicine. That's that. Okay. But they are basing this on a very limited map, just LDL, and just, CRP. So this glyc-A tracks inflammation levels over a longer period of time. That's a very important factor there. That's different than a CRP, which is just inflammation today. This means something's been going on for a while. And when you start to see this number go down, now you know you've gotten ahead of whatever's causing the inflammation. Poor metabolism is what causes an elevated glycate. Citrate is another thing. You measure those levels. Basically, this is a measure of the energy system stress. How hard are your cells having to work? You make more citrate, the more you're cramming carbohydrates into your system and kind of overloading the system. So if you've got high citrate levels, you probably are doing a little too much with the carbohydrates. Leucine, this is, one of these amino acids. It goes up also if you're overstressing the system. Valine and isoleucine are also branch chain amino acid markers, showing signs that you're kind of overloading the system. And then small HDL, you've heard LDL is the bad cholesterol, HDL is the good cholesterol. Well, there's a subfraction of HDL, the small HDL, which are actually the good of the good cholesterol. And so if that goes low, which it often does in people who are insulin resistant, and if you're insulin resistant, you're not going to be able to burn fat. You cannot, it's difficult to lower your weight when you're insulin resistant because it just shuts off the enzymes that help you to burn fat. So if you've got a lower HDL, small HDL count, then that's part of this metabolic vulnerability. So what you want to see is glyc-A go down, citrate go down, leucine, valine, isoleucine go down, and this go up, the small HDL particles. So here's the crux of this. This is the system that is really causing the most problem and what's driving all those numbers that I just showed you in the wrong direction for most people. And this is what leads to the weight gain, the cardiovascular disease, the high blood pressure, and the hair loss, all the other metabolic problems, all the other things that are tied to this. So even skin problems, joint pain, you name it, a lot of these things, your risk for cancer goes up with insulin resistance. So here's what's happening on the inside. I told you, the map isn't the territory. There's some people who have a quote unquote high LDL, but now we're starting to find that some of these people don't have any increased risk of death or cardiac events or cardiovascular disease than people who have normal LDL. And it's because they are not metabolically vulnerable. Here's what's going on in the day-to-day with these people. They eat breakfast, they have a blueberry muffin for breakfast, they start spiking their glucose, and then they crash because they have an overreactive insulin response at this point. Then they eat something else at lunch, usually some mac and cheese and some refined carbohydrates, and throw some other crap in there, maybe a dessert, chocolate chip cookie, spike their glucose, bring it back down, and then a snack, and then dinner, and then, so you've got this roller coaster of insulin here happening all day long. With each of these things, you're having huge exposures to insulin. And over time, your cells become less responsive to that insulin. Insulin's like a key that unlocks a door on your cells to allow the glucose to go in. And eventually what happens if you keep spiking your glucose like that every day, the number of locks on the doors goes down. So you got a lot of keys, but no door locks. And even when you get the key in the lock, it's a rusty lock. It doesn't work so well. And that's the greatest analogy I can tell you about how insulin resistance works. To compensate, what your body does, it starts kicking out more insulin all the time. This is the fasting insulin level, so that even when you're not eating, you're in between meals, you have higher levels of insulin circulating through your body. Now, that high level of insulin will absolutely drive inflammation in your body. It will drive your blood pressure up in at least six different ways. It will affect your lipid metabolism, making your cholesterol numbers not so great. When you start raising up LDL in this context of high inflammation, that's the recipe for stroke and heart attack. Okay. There's certain situations where a high LDL does not necessarily propose an increased risk to you. That's the new theory by a lot of people nowadays. because you're seeing that only half of the people who have heart attacks have high LDL. The other half have normal LDL. So how is this happening? This is the explanation. Their metabolic vulnerability is the explanation. So even normal LDL becomes toxic in the face of high inflammation. Okay. So how do you break out of that cycle? Because that tendency, I want to go back to this tendency, when you get to these little naders here, where the glucose bottoms out, goes below your baseline level, well, you're going to get hungry in those time frames. That's why you keep doing this. You keep going back to the carbs and the refined carbs and sugar, and having to keep snacking to keep yourself from being hungry. It's because when your blood glucose goes low, you get hungry. It sends a bunch of triggers to your brain that compels you to go eat. And it's impossible to resist. Believe me, I've tried until I got my metabolic vulnerability numbers much better. And so it can kind of keep you in the cycle, and you need something that's a wedge between you and that hunger to get you out of it. Now, here's a few little maneuvers that you can work with in the beginning. Some of these you probably already heard, and you're going to say, I've already tried all this. It doesn't work. But maybe you haven't tried this. And no matter what, because I'm going to show you something in a second that's a secret weapon that's very safe and easy, and something you will be able to do for years to come, unlike GLP-1s, which I highly don't recommend you doing long-term. There are no real long-term studies on those. And in my opinion, this is my opinion, GLP-1 medications are for diabetic patients only, and not even for all diabetic patients. They are for a subset of diabetic patients, basically those who, if they don't get ahead of the insulin resistance, something very bad is going to happen to them in the next 6 months or a year. So it's time to, and it's the last move you make before going to like a lap band or a gastroplasty or something really aggressive. By the way, this is part of the secret weapon I will show you. And this is exploding all over the world right now as we speak. So some first moves you can make. Protein first meals. You know, meat, beans, and vegetables. That's every meal. The meat goes first, the vegetables, and then they have whatever complex carbs that you're going to eat after. Have a 10-minute walk, or better, a 15-minute walk within 15 minutes of each meal. If you do this, that has a tremendous benefit on lowering your risk for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and a bunch of other things. A 15-minute walk within 15 minutes of eating a meal. Fewer refined carbs and liquid sugar. Now, I know that's not a surprise to you. A lot of people already know, I don't need to be eating the muffins, the mac and cheese, and, you know, the tons of mashed potatoes and things like that all the time, or drinking sugared soft drinks. Nobody's having an aha moment over that. And then longer breaks between eating. Okay, that's the hard part. If you are someone who's really dialed into carbs and sugar, and it's really hard for you to go a long time between meals, that's a tall order. So I can tell you to do that, but you doing that and you being able to do that on a regular is two different things. It was for me, that's for sure. The idea of fasting for 14 to 16 hours before was laughable for me in the beginning. So I want to show you a little something in just a second that will help you out with that. Now, one lab that you need to discuss with your primary care provider, because this goes beyond what they are normally checking, and they don't check for this. Even the weight loss clinics don't check this regularly. So your doctor will check your hemoglobin A1C, and that's like a 3-month average, I think, of your blood glucose levels. And they're going to see it's normal, but you may still be insulin resistant, even if that number is normal, because your body is compensating by cranking out more insulin. And I already told you, high insulin levels, you can't lose weight with high insulin levels. And those high insulin levels are wreaking havoc on your body. High insulin activates your immune system, starts the inflammatory process, and it totally messes up your cholesterol metabolism. It also is the thing that kind of drives your hunger. So your doctor is going to measure hemoglobin A1C, tell you that's fine, you're good, see you in a year or 6 months. They're going to check your fasting glucose. They're going to see that's normal. You're not a diabetic. Congratulations. See you next time. What you want to know is, what is your fasting insulin level? And if that level, in my opinion, if it's over 8, you need to be working on it. Okay. Some will say over 10 is the number. I think that's a low standard. Okay. If your fasting insulin level is over 10, you are headed toward becoming a type 2 diabetic. It's not an if, it's when. But if you can get it under 6, now you're in the golden zone. And with the system that I'm about to show you, I've gotten mine to a point that it's undetectable. It's so low that the machine, I'm so sensitive to insulin at this point. I think the machine has trouble detecting anything under 2 or so. And that's where I was. Okay. Under 2. It's a good feeling, especially when my dad and I told you, you can overcome the genetics. I am genetically predisposed to getting type 2 diabetes. My dad had it. So by definition, I'm at risk. But I was able to overcome it with this system. So, all right, I want to show you something here. Just let me switch out here. This is the system that I and now thousands of people around the world are using to put that wedge between you and your hunger. And this system actually has a direct effect on your cells to help resensitize them to insulin. When you become more sensitive to insulin, the insulin levels go low. And when the insulin goes low, the fat will go. Okay. That's when you have a chance. That's when you start to see the blood pressure likely come down as well. And that's when you can see improvements in your cholesterol metabolism. And then you can see, if you're a diabetic, you'll start to see the hemoglobin A1C and the fasting and the blood glucose levels go down, and a whole bunch of other things. And so here's what's happening with this system. This is how it's meant to be used. Let me go into slideshow mode here. I told you before, if you're not eating, then there's no need for your insulin to surge. It gives your cells a break of the exposure to the insulin. So if you can fast, if you can go 12, 14, or 16 hours, then you're giving those cells a break to get resensitized to insulin. So that's but it's hard to do that if you're hungry. So this system, and I've got one of the packets sitting right here. That's what I'm drinking right this moment. You got 2 different nutraceuticals, both which are listed in the PDR, which is the doctor's Bible of pharmaceuticals. But it's the only company that has 2 nutraceuticals that are for insulin resistance listed there. So this is not just any old other supplement. Okay. You don't get in the PDR lest you have credible research behind you and results. So this first nutraceutical is called Unimate. You just drink this, you mix it in a bottle like this, you pour it to the line, the water to the line, you dump the packet into the bottle, you shake it up, and then you just start drinking this. You don't have to drink it all at once, but what it's going to do is raise your GLP-1 up, your GLP-1, not some weird molecule that's made in a laboratory at some pharmaceutical company that was modeled after a lizard peptide. But like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, they modeled these off of the concept of a lizard peptide, a lizard that only eats like 2 or 3 times a year, and until they worked out something that humans can tolerate, sort of. And you're not a lizard, and you were meant to eat more than just a few times a year. And when you suppress a system in your body that hard, 2,500 times harder than your own body's GLP-1 does, then there's this whole thing. It's called homeostasis. Okay. It's the balance. Think of it as like Newton's laws of the laws of gravity. For every force, there's an equal and opposite, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's what happens inside your body as well. If you suppress a system really hard, one direction, there is going to be this pushback. So as soon as you take that stimulus away, you've got a tidal wave of hunger that comes back. And that's what we see in these people. Not only that, though, it's more than just that, because you're not just an inanimate physical object like in physics. You are a biological system. So when you suppress the hunger that hard, then your muscles suffer from malnutrition, then they wither, and then now your muscles are what make you metabolically flexible. That's the ability to burn both carbs that you eat and the fat drawing from your fat stores in between meals. You can't do that so well if you've withered your muscles down. And then, not to mention, if you're over the age of 40 and you start losing bone with that, which is what also happens, and you become more prone to potential, vertebral compression fractures and other fractures. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to lose bone or muscle after the age of 40. Bad idea. So here's the way it would go. You have your last meal of the day here, okay? And right here. And you then don't eat anything the next day. Let's just say this is 8 o'clock. You're not going to eat anything again until noon the next day. In the meantime, your body is eventually going to start drawing off of its own fat stores for energy. And if you are insulin resistant, you're going to become insanely hungry unless you put this little T in front of it. And that will raise your body's GLP-1 up. Your body's GLP-1, which is normal GLP-1. It's not a weird drug. And it's just going to suppress the appetite just when you need it. Not for a solid week after a shot, but for just when you need it. Those few hours in the morning to get you through until the lunchtime. Okay. And during that time, you're going to be burning fat. At that point, there's a second nutraceutical that we use. It's called Balance. Balance, think of it as, this isn't just a Mercedes-Benz of fiber supplements. This is a Bugatti. This is like the best that you can possibly get. And if you look at fiber supplements out there, the best of them are the most popular brands are single source plants. They are trash. And then even like fancier ones maybe have 2 or 3 sources. In this packet, there's at least 7, but I think there may be more because I'm not privy to know there's 2 different blends of fiber in there. I don't know how many are in the other one, but there's at least 7 and probably more. So, and the way you know how good this is what happens after you mix it. If you take Benefiber, you mix that in a glass of water and you walk away for an hour and come back, it's still water. It just looks like water. But if you mix this up into a glass and you leave for 5 minutes, it's already turned into a gel that if it were in your stomach would be coating any of the food that you ate behind it, turning that food into a time release capsule, slowing down how fast that it hits your bloodstream, keeping those insulin levels low, and in some cases dragging through without you ever absorbing it some of the carbohydrates and cholesterol, so that you're not taking in all of the calories at once. And that keeps the insulin levels low. And again, when your cells get a break from insulin, they become sensitive to it again, the hunger levels go down, and that's where all the good, that's where your metabolic vulnerability starts going away. That's the key. So Unimate is the tea. It's an extract of a tea from South America called yerba mate. Down there, they call it God's milk. And the 2 big things that it does is here's a few things. It increases GLP-1 by 60%. It helps to suppress the appetite. It will accelerate your fat burning up to 70%. These, again, proven studies. It has a anti-cancer effect to it. It's neuroprotective and protects the kidneys and lowers inflammation. Then there's the Balanced. Again, this is this premium fiber supplement system, and also has phytonutrients and vitamins added in. Phytonutrients, phyto means plant. Plant nutrients that help to reduce inflammation in your body. So it helps lower cholesterol, lower blood glucose, improves gut health, improves satiety, lowers inflammation, keeps you less hungry, both of them. They have been studied by the Cleveland Clinic, the world's #1 heart hospital. And so here's the offer I'm going to make to you today for this system. Now, let me go over here. I'm going to put this up here right now. And another thing. All right, here's part of the offer. Now, one thing I have is a free mini course that you can, if you want to, just screenshot this right now and then hold your thumb down over that QR code. It will take you to this free mini course to help you to start reducing your insulin resistance. Okay. And then here's another QR code that's coming. Here is an offer for this system here, and you're getting it at my discount, the price that I personally pay for this. So I think it's like a 32% discount. Just screenshot this screen right now, hold your thumb over the QR code, and it will take you to the site to get it at this price. And that, by the way, is a permanent discount. So that's the price you would pay for it forever. By the way, when you subscribe, as opposed to do a one-time purchase, and it's very easy. Don't be paranoid about subscribing to this. If you subscribe to it and you want to stop it, you can go back to this exact same website and put a hold or a stop, cancel on your order. Okay. But here's something else that I'm going to add to this to make this worth your time. I have a free guide. It's called the lab cheat sheet. These are the labs that your doctor should be testing to make sure that you are good, metabolically good, that your doctor probably does not check right now. In fact, I venture to say most of your physicians do not check a few of these labs, but they're what let you know how metabolically vulnerable you are, how metabolically healthy that you are. And so a second thing I'm going to give you is another guide. It's called the Metabolic Reset Protocol. This is an eating framework, not a diet, but a framework that you can use so that no matter what types of food that you like to eat, you can use this framework to eat so that you're achieving metabolically what you need to make the needle move on that scale, or with your cholesterol numbers, or with your blood pressure, or whatever else it is that your goals are for this year. The last thing I'm going to give you is something called the Apps and Wearable Technology Guide. This is a curated list of apps and wearable technology that I think are worth your time. I have personally vetted these things that are on this list, and these are the things that I think can actually assist you in achieving better health this year if you wanted to invest in an app or a piece of wearable technology. There's a lot of things coming out, some of them not so great. These are the things that I feel confident with. You'll get all three of these guides. You're going to get a 32% discount on your subscription, and you're going to get coaching calls with me. When you subscribe to the system, I'm going to reach out to you. We're going to discuss I'll text you. You can text me back your goals, what it is you're trying to achieve, whether it's to improve your cholesterol numbers or your blood pressure, your weight, or all three, or anything else on the list. And then I'm going to have you text me whenever you receive your first month's supply. I'm going to get on the phone with you, and we're going to go over the best and highest use of this product to make sure that you get the most out of it that you want to get. And then I'm going to follow up with you in a month. And we're going to keep going until we get what we're looking for. We're going to reverse that metabolic vulnerability. We're going to help you control that hunger so that you can actually achieve in 2026 what you wanted to achieve in 2025, in 24, 23, and maybe for a long time. So it's actually about a 32% discount with the link. You get a 90-day money-back guarantee on this system. So you can try this for a quarter of 2026 and still get your money back if you don't like it, okay? And the only thing they require you for that is there's a little app that they have. It's called I think it's called the Feel Great app. And they just want you to use that app alongside taking the system. And the app is actually extremely helpful. It just helps you to it helps you to track how long you're fasting each day, because that's what we want you to do. Skip breakfast, fast a little bit each day. You can skip dinner too. It just matters what your schedule is, as long as you're getting a little gap in there somewhere. And that's it. So to recap, you get the subscription to the system, not a one-time buy. 3, you get the 3 guides, the 32%, I need to change this, 32% discount, and you're going to get coaching with me. And we're going to get those goals set if you subscribe to this. So all you got to do, screenshot your screen, hold your thumb down over this QR code, and subscribe through there, and we're going to be in touch. All right, I hope you found this helpful. We'll start a long and beautiful relationship in health together. All right.